your brain doesn't know the difference between seeing something in nature and actually being in nature. Well, the same is true for horror. Your body goes into that sympathetic fight or flight response. So I have a client who her husband loves to watch scary, gory movies at night and doesn't like to watch them alone. They wants to spend time with the wife. And she was saying that I'm not able to sleep very well. And so we looked at her aura data, and there was a correlation between her watching the horror flicks and having high stress late at night. So we devised an experiment because I'm a scientist. I love experiments. So the experiment was, well, let's experiment to see what happens if you don't watch the horror flick at night. Maybe you read a book or you do something else for a few days and see what the data says. And lo and behold, the data was she was in restored state or a relaxed state, as opposed to being in this very high stress state before she went to bed. And then her sleep was much better.
Welcome to the UpliftHER Leadership Series, a segment on the Self-Care Goddess podcast, a special space where holistic self-care meets high performance and the feminine leads with grace, power, and purpose. This podcast is your pause in a productivity-driven world, a space to reset, regulate, and reconnect with feminine wisdom and visionary leadership. I'm your host, Rita Savoya, holistic nutritionist, trauma-informed breathwork coach, and founder of Breathwork Barista. Each week, you'll hear soul-expanding stories and thought-provoking conversations with women leaders, founders, and change makers who are redefining success and what it means to lead with heart. These are the conversations we need to create the future we desire, rooted in self-care, integrity, and soul-aligned leadership. Breathe in your power. Breathe out the overwhelm. And let's begin. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Self-Care Goddess podcast with a special leadership segment today and a special guest. Before we start, as you know, on this podcast, we're going to walk the talk and just give yourselves a few moments of presence. So perhaps if you feel comfortable and are able to do so, lowering your gaze or even closing your eyes for just a few moments and just noticing your breath flowing in and out of your body, breathing a little heavier than normal. So deepening those breaths. If you feel comfortable counting, you're more than welcome to count 6 counts in and 6 out. If you feel comfortable breathing in and out through the nose, please go ahead and do that, or in through the nose, and just sighing it out through the mouth is okay as well. You just want to take a few moments to check in with our bodies. If there are any areas that you might be feeling some tension, some stiffness, some discomfort, I invite you to channel those exhales into those areas. And imagine the exhales softening, relaxing those areas. Taking a couple more deep breaths and just really using those exhales to help you relax, let go. I now invite you to channel the breaths into the area of the heart. So breathe in and out through the heart area. Where attention goes, energy flows. So let's energize this beautiful organ that's keeping you alive. And as we continue these heart-focused breathing breaths, I invite you to visualize someone that you're grateful for today. Visualize this person as if they were right here in front of you. And I invite you to acknowledge them and send them all the love, the gratitude, and the appreciation for being in your life. And in this space of immense gratitude for this person, let's turn that love, that gratitude and appreciation towards ourselves for doing the work, for being here, taking a time out. On your next inhale, flutter your eyes open and come back to us. Thank you for participating in that quick coherence technique from the Heart Math Institute. So welcome to Uplift Her, a special leadership segment of the Self-Care Goddess podcast where high-performing women share their wisdom, lessons, and stories to inspire the next generation of leaders. Today's guest is one of a kind who can explain the neuroscience of leadership and hit the high notes in a choir warm-up, sometimes in the same breath. Please welcome Dr. Lizette Warner, biomedical scientist turned executive coach, author of Power, Poise, and Presence, and the COO of Trust and Leadership Coaching. With over 2 decades in healthcare and tech leadership, Lizette translates complex science into real-world strategies that help high achievers perform sustainably, lead with clarity, and thrive under pressure. She's coached executives around the globe, teaches at UT Dallas Executive Education Program, and is a certified Hogan practitioner. But don't be fooled by all those credentials. Lizette also admits to reading over 110 books in a single year, even if she still can't remember where she put her keys. Her guilty pleasure, belted out choir warm-ups in the car, and her theme song, Bittersweet Symphony, because real leadership lives in the tension between science and soul, push and pause, and power and presence. Let's dive in. Welcome, Dr. Lizette. How are you today?
Hi, Rita. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So tell us a little bit more. How has your personal journey influenced the mission that you're on today?
Ooh, well, that's a weighty question. The mission I'm on now is to help leaders learn how to avoid burnout by regulating their nervous systems. And that's a very personal journey for me because I have been through burnout. I think a lot of high achieving women, men and women, but I think a lot of high achievers go on that journey too, kind of discovery of yourself and learning about your nervous system so that you can avoid burnout, because that oftentimes that's the thing that we don't pay attention to. We don't pay attention to the breath. We don't pay attention to energy that we're feeling. You know, we may walk in like, oh, how was your day? Well, it was great. Or it was, really crappy. But then we don't really tune into, okay, what about it? Where are you feeling that? When did that start to happen? And tuning into that that's been a discovery of a lifetime for me, really. Begin to listen to my body and then now teach others about the nervous system and really unleash your nervous system so that you can show up as a better leader.
I love that. Thank you. And burnout is definitely a topic that we do discuss on this podcast because high achievers, high performers, most of us have some sort of experience with it. What is your experience and what are some of the warning signs, personal, and then what you see also in your clients that we can watch out for?
Yeah, some of the warning signs are oftentimes it is unable to rest, unable to relax when it's time to go to bed. You can't make that switch, or it's difficult to make the switch from work to not work, or you're checking in on your email over the weekend, right? You've just got this urge to I can't put it down. But really, those are like some of the tangible things that we see, and they're kind of further down the road. Some of the more proximal things that people oftentimes miss because we're not tuned into our nervous system is your energy, like your stress level, things that can be monitored now, things that were in the past not able to be monitored, but otherwise you'd feel it of like, oh, check in, how are your shoulders doing? Oh my goodness, they're really tight, right? We don't have that sort of conversation with ourselves, let alone anyone else, right? We leave that to like, I don't know, yoga session or breath work or something else, but is not part of the work day. So yeah.
So true. So true. And would you say that in terms of your pivotal sort of how you pivoted from biomedical scientist into an executive coach, was that burnout? What was a reason for that? Or do you find that you're experiencing more of it as an executive coach? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think I faced the burnout more from when I was in corporate. So I had gotten my PhD. I was working in corporate and then I left to go get my PhD. And that wasn't necessarily a burnout. It was more of a rust out situation that I was facing. And so if people don't know what's rust out, yeah, what's rust out? Rust out is when I can do my job with my head on backwards and walking backwards, upside down, whatever. Right? It's like you don't even have to pay attention. You can do that job. And so you're not being challenged. And when you're not being challenged, that's almost as bad as burning out. But it's a different form of it because you're not being challenged, you're not being stimulated. And so I was in a situation in my career, both ends of the spectrum. Early on in my career, I was not being challenged. And I was in that stage of rusting out. And so I wanted to get my PhD and I wanted to learn more. And so I pivoted from corporate, went to get my PhD. I went to the Mayo Clinic and that was a great experience. And then I went back into the corporate workplace because we had a small family at the time. And I did the unthinkable, which was I left my corporate job with a small family in tow to go get my PhD. Did that. When I went back to corporate, I'm like, I didn't want to waste the time to do all the things to rise in the corporate ladder and prove myself. So I started working with a coach, a colleague of mine who had gotten some coach training, and that really helped propel my career. And along the way, I got promoted and did all the things. And in that process, I had gotten to the stage where I got a high performing team around me. I was really jazzed. I loved my job. And then it was all taken away. And in that moment, so I don't know if that was burnout or if it was trauma that I was undergoing, but there was a lot of grief and having lost essentially my entire high performing team. And I was left with a few others of us were left. And I was just not feeling the energy anymore. I wasn't feeling the love for my job. I would have described my work in the past as like, I'm not even working. Like I love what I do on a day-to-day basis. And that love died, especially having lost that team. So was that burnout? Was it trauma? A lot of times they can present the same. I didn't have the energy or the love for what I was doing anymore. And so I started, since I had already been exposed to coaching and I was coaching already, I had gotten my coach certification and started coaching more and more. And that was the thing that was giving me energy, that was giving me life. And I was tuning into some of my past experiences of training from the Mayo Clinic and bringing in neuroscience. And so that was where my love was kind of growing. And so that was a stage where, I don't know if you want to call that burnout or if it was just trauma or a bit of both, but that was where I experienced a lot of burnout, not so much in the coaching and the space that I'm doing now, mostly because I have to do a lot of practicing of what I preach. And so that has kept me away from the burnout of, going after it full time, because that's more high achievement. And there's a difference between high achievement and high performance. And achievement, that's the thing, that's the cycle that you can get into. And then it comes the end of the day and it's like, I can't even rest because my mind is still, I'm going, right? I can't even calm down. So that's something that, I try to practice what I preach and not do that sort of stuff. But yeah, it does. It's a lifelong, when you have these habits, it's these things that you just constantly have to keep an eye on.
So true. So what is the difference between high achieving and high performing? The high
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful question. Yeah, because a lot of people think like high achievement is high performance. So I think a lot of times we know what high achievement is, right? You're doing things, you're getting things done, you're crossing things off your to-do list. You may be running with a team and they're doing all the things that they need to be doing. You're hitting your goals and you may not be paying attention to your needs. So your needs may come last. So that means that you may skip lunch, you may work extra hours, you may work on the weekends, those sorts of things. The difference between high achievement and high performance takes into account that you are achieving, but you're balancing your needs and your well-being along with doing the things that you do. And so it's a little bit of working smarter, not necessarily harder. So instead of checking all of those emails, like for example, I have times when I work and I need to get some tasks done. So I don't pay attention to email. I don't pay attention to the Slack channels. The things may be coming and I'm like, I'm in my zone. I'm doing the things that I need to do, or I'm passing off. So I'm organizing, kind of like strategically organizing my day of like, is this something that I need to do, or can an assistant take care of this? And what are the things, Lizette, that need to come off your plate? And what are the things that only you can do? And then we prioritize getting those only the things that you can do done. And so that takes into account not just my own things that I have to get done, but also my well-being. So one of the practices that I have is I go for a walk, usually after I eat. It's something that I've gotten into the habit now, or I'll walk in the morning, or I will schedule time for myself to get away from my desk. And that's intentional work. It's hard sometimes to do, but it's the thing that's going to keep me at high performance as opposed to high achievement.
Beautiful, beautiful answer. So high achievement, I feel like you can easily get overwhelmed because you're doing so much and not taking care of your emotional, mental, and physical self.
Yeah.
And causes that overwhelm. I love that scheduling. It's almost like a Pomodoro, right? Like you're focused, hyper focused. You're not going to do anything else for those whatever X amount of minutes that you have. I love that. But what would you say to an entrepreneur though? So someone, I get the C-level, but someone who it's their baby, Interesting though, because when I was emailing amazing women like yourself with reaching out about this show, a lot of women, and I would smirk, would answer me on a weekend, would reply to my email on a weekend. And I did too, because I was checking. So I knew, and I was just laughing. I'm like, look at us. Here we are talking about, being role models and all this. And we just love what we do. And, I know that you're super, you replied because you do want to share your story and you have something to share and you want the next generation to be able to hear this and maybe learn something from it, learn a lot. But yeah, like what would you say to someone who's so passionate and it's actually energizing them? And especially for entrepreneurs, it's their baby for now, right? So what sort of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say to tune into that energy, right? Because we tend to tune in when we're being fed, right? That's high energy. It's like, oh, I really love this. But then we don't stay tuned into that energy. And that is for me, that's become my litmus test. So I've used other tools like I think you and I had talked about that, pre-show, these tools that you can use. And they're good, but really we want people to start learning and tuning into themselves, because that is really your barometer. Any sort of extra tool that you use, it's going to have some sort of delay to it. But tuning into your energy, and I schedule it because I know myself. So I schedule breaks, right? I tack on, I eat, so I go for a walk. I have breakfast, I go for a walk. And so for me, it's almost like that habit of you wake up, you brush your teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that's where I've started to, it's not on my calendar, but it's already a task that it's almost like I wake up and I brush my teeth. Well, I eat, I go for a walk. Or it's Monday, so I'm going to go to spa, right? And sit in the hot tub for a little bit. Right? So I have those things built into my schedule. And what I would tell entrepreneurs is you can feel it. You can feel it when you're, because it's your baby, we tend to get passionate and we tend to dive in. But a lot of times there are so many things that we don't have to do, and we do them anyway. And oftentimes I coach sometimes entrepreneurs. And so I had one last week who I was coaching, and she had said, all of it, when she was ready, she was going to hire an assistant to help her out, but she wasn't there yet. And so as I was listening to her, I had said, well, what's the holdup? Well, I can't hire one full time. Well, you don't need to hire one full time. What about 5 hours a week? What about 5 hours a month? What is something that you don't need to do that you can pass off to someone else so that you can stay in that zone of genius? And so is that something that someone else can do? Can they apply for the podcast for you so that you can rest and recharge and be fully engaged to tackle the things that come at you next week? Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. Thank you. Makes sense. It definitely makes sense for sure, to make sure that your energy is managed properly, right? We manage all these other things, right? Like our wealth, and some of us our health too, in terms of, but we don't look at, or we overlook managing our energy. And that's one of these things that I really, really want to get better at for sure. This. So tell us a little bit more about how, I like your little examples. I know you've already shared a few. Balancing work life, especially as a high performing woman. Is there such a thing? Can we do that? And how are you doing it?
Good question. For the longest time in my career, I don't think I managed it at all very well. And I know I've heard like work-life harmony, work-life integration. What I've discovered over the years is you have to find what works for you. I tend to be a late morning person, and I oftentimes used to think like, "Ooh, I'm an early morning person." But I need a little bit of time to get myself situated and going. I've got some reflections that I want to do. I said I'd like to get the walk in, because if I don't, then I don't do it later. And so I think you have to find what works for you. That ultimately is how you do this whole work-life balance. And if that means, I wake up at 5 to start my day so that I can report in and get so-and-so everything done so that I can go pick up the kids at 2 and then just be there with them and spend time in the evening, then maybe that's okay. I think especially in this age where so many people are either working from home or working remotely, or you go to the Starbucks or any library, wherever, and people are working, right? It's so funny. Sometimes I said that I go to there's this spa that has a lot of pools that I go to once a week. And oftentimes I'm there to kind of relax and recharge. And then I see people, on their phone, or they're scheduling meetings, or they brought this is what gets me. They bring their laptop. They bring their laptop to the side of the pool, and they're like, doing their work while they're multitasking, right? While they're trying to regulate their nervous system, and you're still working. So maybe that's a little bit too pushy. Like it's hard to regulate your nervous system while you're in the midst of work, but finding that unique balance of what works for you. I know my CEO, she works on Sundays, Sunday evening sometimes, or all of a sudden I'll be getting all these, Slack texts, and I'm like, I'll check them tomorrow, right? I'll still be there tomorrow, because I'm like, I don't need to be doing that. So I think you have to find what works for you.
It is very personalized. I completely agree, but it's doable. We all same 24 hours. So I really do highly encourage women to just sit down and kind of see how to juggle or maneuver or like find that integration or harmony or whatever it is.
Mhm.
It's funny you say that about people that are, they use the spa day as a day to work, or maybe it's kind of like, and then they'll post office view for today and it's at the top, right? So it's quite interesting. Can you actually, let's geek out a little bit here, Lizette, some like neuroscience backed ways to help our nervous system, regulate our nervous system?
Well, I love nervous system regulation. So I was in full disclosure. So I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease. Now that can happen because of many different, like it can be genetic, it can be stress related. More than likely, it was very stress related because I was living a very jet setting kind of life when I was in corporate and not taking very good care of myself. So I'm at the stage where I am very much tuned into my nervous system. And so this is one of the things that I help our leaders learn how to do is, okay, how do you regulate your nervous system? And there's so many ways that you can use. You did one at the beginning of the show, right? That breath work. But I also know with high achievers, sometimes breath work, I like to say breath work is advanced work. Because I've got some high achievers that if you ask them to do any sort of breath work or meditation, they will flip out on you. And that is the first thing that stresses them out. And so I call it's an advanced maneuver when when you know a little bit more about your nervous system and you can get into that. So I often caution people, you don't necessarily need to start with breath work. It's a great technique. And if it works for you, great, go for it. But there's so many ways that you can regulate your nervous system. So we have a sympathetic nervous system, that's your fight or flight response. And you have your parasympathetic nervous system, which is what's always been termed as the rest and digest system. Most of the high achievers tend to be stuck in the sympathetic side. And it's not like the sympathetic side is not bad. There's a reason that we have a fight or flight response. But when we stay stuck there because we're chronically achieving or we're chronically go, 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 your nervous system was not designed to be constantly in that state. And then we have a third piece, which I probably won't even get into, but I'll go ahead and mention it. It's the enteric nervous system. And so that is the nervous system, the connections between your gut and your brain. And there are thousands of connections between your gut and your brain. So anyway, I'll leave that aside. So between the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, where we tend to go is the parasympathetic nervous system to kind of regulate that activity from the sympathetic side down. So things that you can do, I'm finally getting there. Sorry, audience.
No, I love this.
But you asked on sympathetic activities and things that you can do, of course, are the breath work, but it's also being out in nature. And your brain is such a fascinating organ that your brain cannot tell the difference between being in nature and visually looking at nature. So having a plant in your office, looking at a waterfall for your background. So not having it as your desktop saver that, you walk away, you come back, but actually intentionally gazing at the image and allowing your body to feel the awe, to feel the wonder. Like whenever you can get to awe and wonder, you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system. So it's that awe and wonder state. And so that can be different for different people. Some people it's like, oh, the night sky, or maybe it's butterflies. And so that can be very different from person to person. But another activity is, and this one I love because you mentioned this is something that I do, is humming. So your cranial nerve 10, runs right behind your vocal cords. So whenever you sing or hum, that stimulates that nerve. And so that tends to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. So those are kind of like a smattering of, and there's other things, but those are kind of a smattering of things that
to do as well. How would you, so you mentioned a few things in terms of getting an image or maybe even sound, I'm assuming can also without activating the parasympathetic. And how about the humming? Where would you slide that in terms of habits?
Well, humming, it's interesting because I've been working on different ways to activate my parasympathetic nervous system, especially with Hashimoto's. It tends to, all the activities, especially with Hashimoto's, it's like someone's hit the brake on the parasympathetic nervous system. So I really have to activate it to kind of combat the brake that's been put on there. So humming, it's interesting. Like you could do it in the car, you can at your desk while I remember like being in the kitchen and my aunt would just be like humming her favorite tune, right? Yeah. But it's also like doing the things that we love doing, maybe it's cooking, maybe it's, cleaning out the kitchen. Surprisingly, I'm putting cleaning out the kitchen because it's one of those things that calms my nervous system when I'm like washing dishes.
Yeah.
It's very therapeutic for me. I go into my friends' houses and I immediately go and I wash the dishes. They're like, no, don't do that. And I'm like, no, I enjoy doing this. Please let me. So that's why I say it's very unique for different people. But yeah, that's where, humming is a good activity simply because it's stimulating immediately that cranial nerve.
Amazing. So I use humming as part of my breathwork experience. And we talk about it in a way that it increases nitric oxide production that helps to dilate the vessels and just get some beautiful oxygenated blood. So yes, humming is part of my repertoire for sure. And then you wonder why kids are always so happy because they're humming their favorite song. And it's one of those, breathing techniques or just techniques in general that nobody really needs to know you're doing it because nobody. Yeah, you could just be a really happy person. That's probably why you're a happy person, because you have parasympathetic nervous system activation going on.
And if you're generating that energy, like that's the energy you're putting out there, and other people are picking up on, like we can always pick up, if somebody's angry or upset, it's like, oh, what's going on? And this is science. This isn't just like woo woo. It's actual science that we can pick up on that energy. It's a frequency, just like anything else. And we can pick up on that. And that's the thing that you're sending out into, the universe, into your contacts, people who come in contact with you.
Yes. And then of course, law of attraction, you're attracting more of it. Yes, exactly. So tell us a little bit more about the science behind the nature and the image of nature. Because yes, I was very well aware that a lot of times the brain cannot tell between perceived and real. So that's why it's great to visualize and of course dream and all of these amazing things that we do. But in terms of nature, looking at a picture of nature, I haven't really come across that.
Oh, yeah, 100%. It activates the same neural circuits when they do studies of people, like in an MRI machine that can take a look at what part of your brain is engaged or not engaged. The same parts of your brain are engaged, whether you're or whether you're looking at a picture of a waterfall or you're out in nature, viewing that waterfall. Those same neural circuitry is being activated.
Oh, isn't that amazing? Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Does it have anything to do with mirror neurons or?
So the mirror neurons that is triggered when when I'm looking at something, like looking at you and you're smiling, and what happens is, and this was a study that was done, I think it was in Italy. I can't.
Banana, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what the mirror neurons do is like they mimic like what is happening or what they're seeing happening in something else. Yeah.
I actually do this little thing. I'm a little annoying, but when I'm in an elevator, I'll be like seeing this and just kind of in a very busy elevator just to see who's going to look at me. And then I'm going to force them to smile because of mirror neurons, but a lot of them are just looking down on their phone. So I'm just like, okay, nobody's looking at me.
Yeah.
I play this little game with myself. That's how bored I get when I'm in the elevator, especially if it's a long ride.
Uh-huh. And that's the thing that contributes to people around us picking up on our cues, right? So they're able to pick up on that through their mirror neurons. Like the same things are firing in their brain.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. So fascinating. Anything new in the neuroscience world? If I were to do it again, Lizette, I would do neuroscience and then psychology, just kind of bring all that together.
Uh,
For sure. Maybe one day. But anything that's really fascinating you right now in the world of neuroscience and how you're bringing that into executive coaching?
I think the thing that is really fascinating me, and I don't know that and maybe it is somewhat new, but it's a little bit of what we had talked about with the enteric nervous system. There's
The backside, yes.
a whole study of the enteric nervous system that is leading to almost new medical areas, which are, it's like endocrine, immunology, neurology, something like that, where it's because it's tied in all together. And so you're having new areas of study. And I was like, I saw that and I was like, ooh, that would be so cool to study.
Yes, for sure. Actually, I have a personal story with my mom who was misdiagnosed with dementia. I think I mentioned this during our pre-talk, and it was actually a gut issue. She was having very similar mental health symptoms, but it was actually a gut issue. So I am so happy that so much more research, so much more science is evolving, and people are getting to know more and more that yes, mental health is completely connected to the
Yeah.
gut.
Yeah, 100%. That enteric nervous system, it's this complex network of, and that's what you were alluding to, right? Is this complex network of nerve cells, and they originate from the gastrointestinal tract, and so many neuronal circuits that it's called the second brain.
Yeah,
So
incredible.
when people say, I feel it in my gut, it's like, aha, okay.
Valid.
Yeah, it's valid.
Exactly. So listen to that. And also being a nutritionist, all the things that we're eating that are damaging that gut microbiome or just in general
Mhm.
GI tract that is not allowing us to optimize those neural pathways is scary. It's very, very scary. So yes,
Yeah.
there's one thing that it's always starting with the gut. If you have any, start with the gut because it's probably something there that you can start. It's probably the root cause of a lot.
A ton of stuff. Yeah. And I think that is the area that I would expect to see more growth, more research coming out. And so that is just, I find that, fascinating.
Yes, I totally agree. So tell us a little bit more. I'm curious about your self-care rituals. I know you talked a little bit about a few. So what do you do to keep yourself grounded and with lots of energy and vitality?
Yeah. For me, I tend to, we already talked about that. I walk in the morning and I pray. That's part of my practice. And before, I guess it starts the night before, where I already kind of prepare myself for bed, get myself ready in, already winding down, so to speak, so that I can have a good night's sleep. So it starts almost the night before. And that means that I have to stop eating, 2 to 3 hours before I go to bed, because I've seen the data and it interferes with my sleeping. I also don't drink 2 to 3 hours. Actually, I don't drink, but especially not 2 to 3 hours before I go to bed, because again, I've seen the data, it disrupts my sleep. So I don't do things like that. And I try to keep a consistent bedtime. So you'll notice the theme here is sleep. It's the one thing that when I start working with a new client, or we bring a client in, or I'm working with a group, I always hit on the importance of sleep. If you do nothing else, let's get your sleep rounded out, because if you're not sleeping, that is going to contribute to you having a bad day tomorrow. And so I found if I stay up late at night, it messes up with my deep sleep. So I get less deep sleep. I maybe get the same amount of sleep, because let's say I wake up later. But what happens is, the reality is I lose out on deep sleep, which that is an absolute necessary piece of your sleep cycle. And, it's where when you sleep, a lot of garbage, very scientific term, but a lot of garbage and waste is removed from your brain, so that it's cleared, so that you have a clear head to begin work the following day. So that's why sleep is so important. So kind of my self-care starts and ends with sleep. And then, of course, the activities, right? So making sure I'm getting enough activities, and making sure that I'm eating well and hydrating, those sorts of things.
I love that. So I have 6 pillars of self-care, and they're very foundational. Forget biohacking if you don't have this stuff laid out. And I call sleep sacred. It's just, I love going to sleep and just getting a super amazing night's sleep. And I was always a night owl, so I never really appreciated the sleep like I do now. But like you, I tell my clients, yes, you want a really productive day, it has to start the night before. So we need to get those activities that you do before. And it's interesting, like we have bedtime routines for our kids. And then as we grow older, I'm like, what happened? Why did we stop that? Like we totally need that, right? So yes, I am with you on sleep is so important. And you're measuring this with the Aura Ring in terms of, oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, this is one of those things that is if I check on nothing else in the day, that's the thing that I check on is my sleep and how am I doing? And I oftentimes do a lot of experiments to coordinate or isolate activities or food or things that I'm doing. How does that correlate with my sleep? And so days that I like to go to the sauna, and then the cold, not super cold, but coldish.
Yeah.
And on those nights, I sleep really, really well.
Wow.
Yeah. I sleep really.
But yeah, for sure. And what about just sauna?
I don't normally just do sauna. I usually do both.
Yeah.
But because you have to have some sort of cooling cycle after the sauna. So, but even if I'm thinking back, sometimes over the winter, I don't do the cold. So even just the sauna, that has an impact on my sleep. I sleep better.
Have you experimented with other things that disrupt? So you mentioned alcohol, you mentioned food, anything else that you feel disrupts? Like I'm thinking even horror films or something that you watch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of my I don't watch horror films, and I don't watch the news either. It's funny, the majority of neuroscientists. So I can't remember, I was reading a study or something in one of the magazines that had said that most neuroscientists do not watch the news because it was like 70 some percent of neuroscientists do not watch the news because it triggers negative thoughts, habits, and patterns. But to answer your question about the horror film, it's the going back to what we had talked about of seeing something in nature. Your brain doesn't know the difference between seeing something in nature and actually being in nature. Well, the same is true for horror. Your body goes into that sympathetic fight or flight response. And so I have a client who her husband loves to watch scary, gory movies at night and doesn't like to watch them alone. Like they wants to spend time with the wife. And she was saying that I think I'm not able to sleep very well. And so we looked at her aura data, and there was a correlation between, her watching the horror flicks and having high stress late at night. So we devised an experiment because I'm a scientist. I love experiments. So the experiment was, well, let's experiment to see what happens if you don't watch the horror flick at night. Like maybe you read a book or you do something else for a few days and see what the data says. And lo and behold, the data was she was in restored state or a relaxed state, as opposed to being in this very high stress state before she went to bed. And then her sleep was much better.
Yeah. I'm curious why you didn't call it causation. Why correlation?
Well, it's an experiment.
Okay.
So in order to be correlated, we'd have to do far more iterations of it. Yeah.
Okay. Just, yeah.
Yeah. Before I say, it's caused by this, there's a strong correlation. Yeah. The scientist is like, there's a correlation between these two. Yeah.
But it's so true. And when I stopped watching, because I used to love horror films, and I stopped watching the news, by the way, years ago. So I think I am a little neuroscience. And the worst thing you can do is watch it at 6 o'clock while you're eating dinner. Like, it's like a recipe for a disaster. But when I was really, my aha moment for me was when I was watching the series Narcos, the cartels, and I'd had the most vivid dream, Lizette, that I was one of the cartel wives, and it was just like I woke up in sweats, and I was like, okay, no more series, no more like crazy like stuff. So now I love watching romantic comedies. I was never into that, never. They were like so cheesy, but now I just love them. Or happy, like underdog documentaries, you go to nice. So I totally agree with you. Have you considered, because that's kind of my next thing, blood sugar glucose monitor, like real?
Those are all the rage. Those are all the rage. I think Aura even has come out. I just saw yesterday a blog post that they came out with a sensor that connects to the Aura ring, and it gives you, or connects to the Aura app, and it gives you your blood glucose levels, so that you can start to correlate what you're eating with what's it actually doing to your insulin levels. Yeah, I personally haven't done that. I know my husband's done it because he's diabetic, and so he was watching that for a time, but I haven't.
Yeah,
an area that I've delved into.
Next for me to actually kind of see what foods, and I'm going to probably be shocked by some of my favorite foods. For sure, potatoes. I love potatoes. I love my truffle fries. That's my guilty pleasure for sure. But I try to fry them in really better oils. Yeah, it's kind of, I'm kind of scared to approach that way.
No, my Aura ring was actually telling me when I cut everything out of my diet and I was bringing things on back slowly, so I could feel it in my body. I'm like, oh yeah, that's maybe not something I can have. But then my Aura ring was also shooting my body into stress, or whatever it was that I was having. It was correlated. I was finding that there was a correlation between my stress level going higher.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So what would be a recommendation for a woman, high performing, probably going through some peri or maybe menopause, and sleep gets usually affected majorly? What would be something that she can start doing right away? Maybe a small step.
Yeah. So small step would be to manage your sleep hygiene. That would be the first thing. Then subsequent things. And so that's things like, making sure that you're getting ready for bed. If that means you need to take a bath to calm down, or whatever you need to do to get that parasympathetic activity up so that you're ready for bed and rest, keeping a cooler bed, staying away from, lights, devices and things like that late at night. And then, staying away from the horror flicks and things like that. So the sleep hygiene is kind of the big thing to get yourself ready. But then if it's something that's ongoing, especially if you're in perimenopause or you're starting to enter into menopause, that is a thing where as we age, your body, you start waking up in the middle of the night and things like that. So that might be something that you want to see a physician about. Yeah, and get some assistance.
It's exactly hormone replacement if need be, something to address, the actual condition. I love that. So you had a full day, no responsibilities, Lizette, to yourself. What would that look like?
Oh, I love this. So I would stay in my PJs, or put on just some comfy clothes, right? And typically I would read. I love to read. That's how I, instead of watching. So I do that via audio.
Fiction or nonfiction
Both.
or both?
Yeah, both. I do both. I do a lot of audiobooks, and instead of watching things at night, a lot of times we tend to read. And so we get through a lot of books that way. And then if my husband and I are both reading the same thing, we'll listen to it instead of watching something on TV. So we do that. So yeah, it would involve like probably walking and spending some time reading, and then I might do, a bath.
Very
Yeah,
nice. Very nice.
listening
So
to
yeah,
some music.
what are your techniques in getting 110 books in? So audio, and I found that putting it like obviously near my bed so that if I get to sleep a little early, that's when I read. Yeah, how do you fit in 110 books a year, Lizette?
It's easier than you'd think. No, most people are like, wait, what? I didn't even read one. And I'm with you because I used to be that person who would read maybe one or two books a year at most. So I get you. I never intended to read 110 books. My goal was maybe I can read 50 books, like maybe a book a week, something like that's doable. And then I got to May and I had read all 50 books. Wow. And I was like, this is wild. And so then I listen to audiobooks. So when I'm walking or when I'm driving, I'm listening to a book. And the other thing that I do is if I'm not into the book, I will DNF it. So, and that took me a long time to get to. So, and if you don't know what DNF is, it is do not finish or did not finish.
Okay.
So, and that's a book that's read.
Okay.
So not that I DNF a lot of books, but that first year that I was reading, it was a struggle to read some of these books. And my husband was watching me. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, this book is just awful. He's like, he's an author. He's like, you don't need to finish it. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, but the checklist person in me says I have to finish it. Otherwise, I've not read the book. DNF is an actual category. So I was like, really? And then I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm done with this book. And I move on to the next book. So I think my first year I had, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 books that I didn't read, didn't finish.
I was thinking of doing like a book review for myself. I feel like there's so much knowledge that sometimes I don't retain it, or I'll recall it when somebody else brings it up, but I won't necessarily like recall it myself. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe I got to take, by the way, the assessment that you guys do in terms of brain. But yeah, do you like do that? Do you do a recap of it so you kind of have the main points, or no, you just kind of read it and that's it?
No, sometimes I do a review and sometimes I do a review that I don't post. I just record a video review for myself. Sometimes I will stick a post out there on LinkedIn of these were my favorite books in April, or these were my favorite books of 2024, and why. And I think I even did a blog post on how what were my favorite books and how to read more books.
That out for sure. Speaking, I mean, usually I ask this question a little later, but what's a book, a quote, or mantra that has profoundly impacted your life so far?
Yeah, I think for me, it is something that I've heard my entire married life. After I got married, I had a lot of self-doubts working in corporate and then even going to get my PhD. I got accepted to the Mayo Clinic and I really couldn't even believe it. Like, me? Really? Why would you accept me? And so something that I've heard often, and it's in my book as well, Power Poise and Presence, is go be brilliant. And it is something that my husband has always told me, before I walk into that executive room or I'm going to give that presentation. He's like, go be brilliant. Mm-hmm. And so that's been something that has stuck with me. And it's a reminder for me, but it's also a call to action for me and for others to go be brilliant, because you are.
Beautiful. So We talked a little bit about it during the pre-conversation that we had, which is sort of this unexpected theme that came after having these amazing conversations, the pre-conversations really. And I wanted to ask the question during the podcast about masculine and feminine energy. I don't know if you remember that we talked briefly about it. Have you experienced it in your corporate world or even in the executive? And I'm just curious in terms of how do you see this playing out in your life?
Yeah, I think with the years and the decades we've been a part of, and I think even with the studies that are out there and show that we've had a lot of male-led institutions, but also at work, like that's been the model, is that male led culture. And it's certainly been, I think it's something that has impacted me as well, because you do what you've been modeled, right? We tend to follow what is modeled for us. And so in my career, I had a lot of male models. But I also have to say that in my career and in my life, I've had the benefit of working for a lot of European companies where there was a lot of collaborative approaches to leadership and a lot of female leaders as models. I'll point out my husband as well, who's not a female, but he's Irish, and Ireland has had female presidents. They have very strong female characters. And he has always been one of those people who has been a champion of mine, but not just of me, of women in general. And it's just one of those things that I truly admire. So while I do see that there is a lot of masculine type energy, that, at least what I've experienced has been a little bit of both. And it's interesting. The research shows, as men age, they tend to become less confident. And as women age, we tend to become more confident.
This is
more outspoken.
In general.
Just in general.
I've seen that. Yeah, I think I've seen that a little bit with my parents. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm hoping for the future is that we can show up in the workplace more authentic as to who we are, as opposed to being a dictatorial or what would have been, let's say, a boss of 20, 30 years ago, very dictatorial, very male, masculine type energy, to I have leaders now who I coach who are male and very collaborative. And they struggle because people are looking to them to be very dictatorial and tell them what to do. And that's just not their style. That just doesn't resonate with them. And so my hope is that in the future that we can show up more authentic. If we are collaborative, that is accepted as a leadership style. If we are more of a feminine persuasion and with more nurturing, let's say, more of that feminine energy, that is also an acceptable leadership style.
Yes, I love that. It's really about showing up authentically, because then you don't have to wear a mask. And it's usually when stress builds, when you have to be a totally different person, than more comfortable doing and being. So yes, I agree. Hopefully we'll be around to see that happen more and more. And what is one rule? This has been a really fun question to ask and get the answers. The one rule that you've joyfully broken on your way to where you are now.
Good question. What rule have you broken?
I know, right? I was thinking about that. I've broken many rules. Where do I start? I feel I'm still breaking rules. I guess, just going to the Middle East by myself. I've broken a family rule, like to leave the family. Everyone's 10 minutes away from each other, and I flew 14 hours away. So I think that for me would be, and kind of doing stuff on my own. Yeah, maybe I would think about that.
Yeah, I think we're cut from the same cloth because I did similar, right? I left the family nest before I was married, and that was not a thing to do. And I sort of set out on my own. I went and got my PhD from the Mayo Clinic, right? I left work.
Mm.
I left a good paying job with two little kids and a husband to be unemployed and be a student.
Yeah.
It's even the students looked at me of like, wait, you had a job? What? Why
Yeah.
would you do that? And so I don't know if that was stupidity, but they were just like, wow. And I remember thinking, well, if not now, then when?
Hmm. Yep. That's so true. No regret.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a dream. And so I was going to go after it.
So cool. And what would you say, going back to that and that pivotal moment in your career, would you recommend it to others to do? Or is there certain parameters or certain personalities maybe that need to be there in order to sustain this? Because this could literally freak somebody else out with a different personality or even just, I don't know, maybe you obviously had a very supporting or you have a very supporting husband that helped you
I
through.
do. Yeah. Super, super blessed to have a very supportive husband. What I would say is that I think we need to get better individually and collectively at discerning.
Hmm.
I think that is a skill and it is a gift. And I think collectively that's something that we can get better at doing.
Mm. And so
Yeah.
let's unpack that a little bit.
Hmm.
Discerning, using what tools, how can we help ourselves to be able to be better in at discerning what's good for us and what's not good for us, what to chase and what not to chase? Is that what you?
Yeah. A good question. I'll answer it this way. When my son he was a gymnast and his coach ended up leaving. And so that gym shut down. And so he ended up going to another gymnastics school. And it was brand new. He didn't like it. And he had just started there. And within a month, he was like, I want to quit. And believe you me, like gymnastics is expensive. It requires a ton of time commitment. And traveling to his gym, it was an hour each way, right? I'm more than happy if he wants to quit, right? But he'd come home and said that, he wanted to quit. And we had said, okay, honey, I get you. You want to quit. Your coach just left. You're in this situation. You're in a brand new spot. You're in a space of desolation right now because a lot of tumultuous things have happened. This is not the place where you make a decision. So we will support you if you want to quit, but we want you to wait at least the summer and keep going to the gym, every day. If at the end of the summer you're still feeling this way, then yes, by all means, we'll pull you out. And because we had explained to him that you make a decision when you're grounded, when you're energetically regulated, coming back to regulated, like everything beautiful happens in regulation. So that is where you make a decision. I get a lot of clients, executives who, should I leave my job? Like, Lizette, tell me, should I go? Because I'm feeling burnt out. I think I need a change. Instead, what they need is regulation. They need to be regulated and grounded so that they can make the right decision, but you can't make it when you're in a state of despair or desolation and things like that. So, you know, for those who are interested, what happened with my son is he ended up going to University of Oklahoma and he was on their gymnastics team. So
Wow.
he stuck with it after the summer. He was like, yeah, it was just, it was a brand new situation. He didn't know anybody there and it felt uncomfortable, as it should, right?
Yes. Wow. What amazing advice. So being in a position where you can discern what it is that you want to do next. You're not taking these hasty decisions
Yeah.
based probably your nervous system or your body or your brain wanting to keep you in safe mode, right? In that status quo. Um,
Yeah. It all comes back to your body, right? And so that is where having a thought partner, like having a coach can be so helpful, whether it's, a spiritual director or coach or whatever, right? Someone to help you regulate.
Yeah, so this is awesome. I love this. Beautiful, beautiful nuggets, golden nuggets. So what is one piece of advice that you would give your younger self? And you can choose which younger self.
Yeah. I would tell her, you know what? You don't have to do what anyone else is doing. And that's a beautiful thing that I learned from my son when he was 3, 4, 5. I don't remember. He was in preschool. And the teacher had called us in. It was one of those, parent teacher conference things. And she had said, I hate to say this, but it's almost like he's a loner, right? The other kids are over here fighting about playing with the Legos, and he'll be over here on his own, flying his plane. And we're like, that's great, right? He's always been that way, even to this day. Like, he is so confident. If he wants to do X and everybody else is doing Y, guess what? He's going to go do X. And to have that confidence and that belief in yourself, I think that's what I would tell my younger self, is like, you don't have to do anything that anyone else thinks or believes that you should do.
So amazing. I wish I had someone tell me that. I do feel that sometimes you need to go through life and experience those things and then build that confidence through those lessons learned. So sometimes, even if we did hear it, it wouldn't have really sunk in.
Yeah, no. Sometimes I wish I had the life my kids had.
Yeah, exactly. So if you could have lunch with any woman, past or present, who would it be and why?
Ooh, this is a good one. It would be St. Catherine of Siena. And I'll tell you why. So she lived at this time, 1300 woman, we were talking about feminine energy, masculine energy. So she lived at this time where there was a schism in the church, and she was able to bring the Pope back, who was in Avignon, back to Rome, and essentially talked back to them or gave them what they needed to hear at the time, and wasn't afraid to do that. And I just find that fascinating, in the 1300s, of someone having the chutzpah to be able to, like, no, you're not going to rule from here. Like, the seat of the church is Rome. Like, get your butt back there. And I just find that admirable, that the strong women always find strength in them. So it'd be interesting if she would have lunch with me, because she was very, she fasted. She was a fastidious faster.
Do you fast? Okay. But I'm sure you would have found some nice little restaurant in Siena to have lunch with.
Probably.
Which, by the way, I like Siena way better than Florence. So beautiful. Smaller, but nicer. So what does success mean to you at this stage of your life and career, Lizette?
I would say success in the past, success to me was like money, position, power. And now it's funny, because success isn't those things. Success to me is being regulated, having good health, and clarity of mind. That, I don't know, that sums up kind of what, and the joy, joy in living. Yeah, the joy in living.
Beautiful how our priorities change and our definitions of certain terms change as well, and what's important given the work that we've done. Yes, it's true. Beautiful. Thank you. So we're moving to the fun rapid fire questions. So no overthinking. Some are really interesting. And then sort of the last closing wrap up question. So one word to describe you as a leader, Lizette.
I would say calm.
Very nice. If your leadership style were a dance move, what would it be?
Plie. I don't know why. I like the word.
I just visualized you doing it.
And it's very graceful. It's one of those, it's very graceful move, right?
Very calming too. Morning, but it's tough to do, by the way, very tough. And I can't even imagine with those pointy, like ballerina shoes doing it. Morning person or night owl?
Like mid-morning.
Coffee, tea, or something else?
A tea.
Mountains or
Mountains. Neither.
why?
It would be a cheese. You know those cheese slicer things? The what? Yeah, like metal cheese slicer with a little wooden handle. That would be me. And why? I know. And Rita's like, why?
Oops.
There is no other tool like it in the kitchen,
True.
right? There are knives, and yes, they'll do the job, but they'll cut you a chunky piece of cheese. This cheese grate, there's no other tool like it, and it will slice cucumbers or cheese, right, with the same accuracy every single time.
Yes. I love. Yes. What's your oddly specific superpower? Like best parking spot or the fastest grocery line?
So most people will tell you who know me, my oddly secret superpower is maximizing things. So you bring me something and I will instantly make it better. Yeah.
Like
it's wild.
Business.
Yeah. I've got people who bring me their businesses and we up level it. I've got people who bring me ideas. My CEO constantly is like, oh, let's, how about this? And then all of a sudden I will take it. And then it's like, wow, we didn't expect this. Yeah.
Very powerful. I like that. I might take an opportunity to tap into that for myself. If you could instantly master one new skill, just like that, what would it be, Lizette?
Playing the piano.
And that's the third person that said this on the show.
Yeah, I've been practicing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful way to self-regulate us, right? Bringing in that harmony in the music. So what's next on your bucket list? Let's do immediate and future, maybe in 10 years from now. And you can choose if personal or professional.
Yeah. So I guess next on my bucket list is like very immediate, going to pick up my husband from the airport. He's been away now for almost a month. Oh, so wow. I'm super excited to see him. And then I guess more proximal is seeing my son. So he's in the military. He's in Italy. Well, I think right now he might be in Africa, but hopefully getting out to see him at some stage later this year.
Very nice. Very nice. So if you could gift every woman listening or watching one thing, tangible or not, think sort of Oprah, you get a car and you get a car and you get a car. What would it be?
What would I want as a gift is where my mind goes to. And I think I would give them maybe the same thing that I gave my younger self, is that, you don't have to be anybody's anything. You don't have to rise up to what the world expects of you or what you think is expected of you. We just need you to be your beautiful, brilliant self day in and day out.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. This has been such a beautiful conversation, just reminding us that leadership, life, it's not just about pushing harder. It's about learning to pause, to regulate, of course, and realign with power, poise, and presence. So I am so grateful that our paths have crossed, and so grateful that you've spent a little bit of time with us today, sharing your beautiful journey, your stories, and your amazing nuggets. So I can't wait to share this with my community in the world. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on UpliftHER Leadership Series, a special segment of the Self-Care Goddess podcast. If this conversation lit something up in you, please share it with a fellow change maker, and let's keep building a new model of leadership together. Follow me on ritasavoya.com and stay connected for more conversations that blend well-being, wisdom, and bold feminine leadership. Until next time, breathe mindfully, live intentionally, thrive gracefully, and remember, self-care is your superpower. Ciao for now.